Hi, and welcome to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast, a weekly conversation with women who found their home in the Mojave Desert. I'm Dawn Davis, and this is episode number 50. If you're a first-time listener, welcome. And if you're a returning listener, thank you so much for coming back. If you're looking for more information about the podcast, past guests, or want to catch up on previous episodes, or just want to drop me a line, it's all at the website, desertladydiaries.com. We're on Facebook and Instagram at Desert Lady Diaries and on Twitter as Desert Lady Diary. Faith Chinnock is a mom and a musician who's moved from one end of the Morongo Basin to the other and has found her groove in the high desert music scene along with her high school sweetheart husband and their band, the Adobe Collective. Today my guest on Desert Lady Diaries is Faith Chinnock. She's a mom, a musician, and co-founder of the high desert band, the Adobe Collective. She came to the desert in 2011 when her naval officer husband was stationed at the 29 Palms base. Over a few short months, she would find herself more in tune with the desert than she ever thought possible. She and her husband are working on their third album at High Lonesome Studio in Joshua Tree. The name of the band is the Adobe Collective. And hi, Faith, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing great.
Good. Well, as I start every podcast, I ask, what was your first encounter with the desert?
So I'm not exactly sure my first encounter with the desert, but the most memorable one is when my boyfriend and I, who is now my husband, came out here on a road trip with my dad. And it was the first time that Tim had really spent time with my dad.
Oh.
Uh-oh. And so it was very memorable.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we were driving through the desert going to Kelso Sand Dunes, and we passed through 29 Palms. You know, at the time I didn't think anything of 29 Palms, and turns out that Tim and I would end up living there.
Right.
And the pizza place that we went to at that time is the one that we go to all the time now. And I remember going in there with Tim as just a teenager.
Wow.
Remembering my dad saying, "Isn't the flatness so liberating?" And we had no clue what he was talking about at the time. And now we remember that quote, both Tim and I, and we feel it now.
Right.
And we really see that in our lives too.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you're out of high school, you get married. Did he sign up for the Navy right away out of high school, or?
So not right away. He went to college. We went to college together in Washington, and then we came back down, and he went to medical school at Loma Linda. And that's when I went to finish my college degree, and he signed up for the military at that point so that he could have his medical school paid for. So yeah, he was in the military technically, and then we went to San Diego for a few years. And then we were trying to decide, where do we want to go next? We had a list of options. One of them was Japan, which looked pretty great.
Yeah.
And we thought, wow, what an adventure that would be. Mm-hmm. And we really thought, let's do that. Let's put that first on our list. Let's just go to Japan and have an adventure.
Cool.
And I got cold feet.
Oh my goodness.
I said, after we had decided that, I looked at my dog and I thought, I don't know if we can handle all of this. It's going to be so stressful taking everything and our dog and all that. And so then we looked at 29 Palms and we thought, wow, that's kind of close to family because we grew up in the Inland Empire area.
Oh, okay.
So our families were there. And we were thinking of having kids, and we thought, well, it'd be pretty great to be near them, but the desert?
Right.
The only thing I thought of the desert was just brown and hot and sad, really. Just hard living, and I didn't want that. We lived at the beach. We were beach people.
Right.
So
what tipped the scales?
Being close to family, really.
Okay.
And then coming out here to see what it looked like. We decided to take a drive up here. And at that point, because nobody else in his residency class wanted to come to 29 Palms, it started looking like we were going to have to come to 29 Palms. So we started looking for a place. And it was a few months early before we would be moving, but we found this house in 29 Palms and fell in love with it immediately. It's an Adobe house. And
oh, wow.
One of the original Adobe homes in the area.
Oh, cool.
So we walked into it, and I was almost in tears as I'm just walking through each room. And as I walked through, it got more and more magical, more and more connecting, more and more interesting. And I just said, I want to live here. So that's really the reason that we immediately moved here, and we're happy. We were excited to be here.
Pat Remington from 29 Palms wrote a book about all the Adobe houses. So before you go, I want you to show me, because she brought me a book when I interviewed her. And I'm sure yours is in there if it's one of the originals.
It is.
So
yes.
That's super cool. So have you had, she talked a lot about when they bought their house in the 70s, having to do repairs on the Adobe itself. Have you had any of that experience, or was everything pretty solid?
Funny you should say that. Right now, Tim has removed some of the plaster and exposed the dirt. Basically, it looks like a dirt wall because there's some water leaking through there or something like that. But wow, it's really incredible to see it kind of exposed too. And so far so good. It was built in 1937, and
oh my gosh,
it's doing amazingly well. It was one owner from 1940 until 2006, I believe.
Wow.
She lived there her whole life, and so her nephew took it over, David Johnson, and he fixed it up, kept it as original as possible, and we were the first people to rent it after that.
Wonderful. How long have you been in that house?
We bought it a couple of years ago. We were renting it from 2011 until, I think, 2014 or 15.
Oh, okay.
And then we bought another house, moved out, and missed it so much that we called David and said, can we buy your house? Because at that point he had it on the market, and we couldn't imagine it going to somebody else when we were so connected to it. And so now we live there. And actually we're moving again, unfortunately, but we're going to keep it and rent it and see what happens.
What a story. So you move here with the intent that Tim is going to be at the base. Is that right?
Yeah.
So you didn't know anybody, and apparently he was the only one in his class that wanted to come here. So neither of you really knew anybody. So how did you all start finding your community, and was it kind of split between the military folks and the local folks, or how did that all kind of pan out?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting you say that, because I remember a very distinct transition after he left the Navy 4 years later. We were so integrated into the Joshua Tree community at that point that it was just smooth, and we just, went from 100% military to 100% Joshua Tree.
That's quite a turn.
It is. Yeah. So when we first moved out, we were on the base all the time. I had all of my friends there. We had our first child on the base, and I did all the activities with the moms there. By the time we had our second kid, we were about half and half, with doing music and being on base. And then eventually everybody moves away too, so a lot of our friends are gone now. That made it a little easier too.
At the point that you got here, were you and Tim musical then, before, when you got married and that sort of thing? Did you make music together at that point? Were you a group of any sort, or did that all kind of happen when you moved to the desert?
So in San Diego is when Tim and I started singing more together. We were doing a couple of open mics, nothing major. He was writing a couple of songs while he was in residency there. Little did I know that I was bringing myself into his project at that point. I was just having fun singing along, and it was kind of a hobby. We sang choir in high school together and didn't really sing much by ourselves, other than he would play Peter, Paul, and Mary songs at home, and I loved singing along.
Well, the harmony.
That. Yeah. So other than that, no. And so in San Diego we did open mics, and then we moved to the desert, and Tim started really seeking it out. He suddenly got really inspired living in the Adobe house. He went to open mics at the saloon religiously every week with Ted Quinn at that point. And so I was going to, and it started forming from there. We started playing with a few people that were there and formed a band, and then it kind of evolved, and now we still have a band, and we're on our third album now.
That's pretty amazing.
So it's been really a process, and all because of the desert, really. The space out here made it so Tim could have time to create and feel what he needed to feel to have the songs come out.
We were just at an event. When this plays, it'll be July, but we were just at an event 3 weeks ago up at Jenny and Mishkin's.
Oh, yeah.
And you guys played, and just the scene even was amazing. Just the scenery behind you guys on the stage, and then you standing up there with your child in your arms, singing while he's kind of helping you. Here, Mom, I'm helping you hold the mic. And then you did the song, We're All in This Together, and got everybody clapping. It's just a really amazing community, I think. And I think the music helps bring people together. Yeah. Would you agree?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I feel that with our music, that's really where our community comes from, definitely. Mm-hmm. If we weren't playing music, I tell a lot of my friends, I don't think we'd have a social life at this point, because it's so easy for us to just go on with our days. And I really respect people who get out there and go see music, because I think a lot of times, wow, I don't know if I'd make the effort to go see music playing, but here I am, because I have an appointment and I am the one playing the music.
Right,
I need to be there.
Right. Yeah.
But over the last 7 years, I've really seen how valuable it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm so grateful that this community appreciates music and that they keep us going.
It's really amazing, and all of the open mics and people that end up collaborating together and things like that. It's really something to see and to experience. As somebody who doesn't play or is in a band or anything like that, it's good to experience. So thank you for doing that. And now I understand where the Adobe Collective name comes from.
Exactly.
So you've got this music thing going on, and you've got kids, and you're doing a political thing now, too. You're kind of involved in the Marge Doyle for Congress. How does one balance all of that?
I've often wondered that myself. I really don't know. I think a lot of it is not being so busy having to drive places or do things, just being in the desert. I just feel like there's a lot of room to breathe, and I'm always brainstorming and coming up with things that I want to do in my life or in the community, and it's easy to make them happen out here.
Yeah.
People are so receptive, and I've just found that, if I want something to happen, it just forms so quickly, because a lot of things aren't here yet necessarily that could be that way. So I don't watch TV. I think that helps also. Right.
Yeah. I'm limited. I do like a news thing at about 5:30. I have dinner with Lester Holt on Channel 4 pretty religiously. And then I pretty much shut the TV off.
Yeah, we just don't have a TV, and I'm on my phone a lot, but it's a lot of connection there, you know, to keep connected with the community too. So yeah, it's so exciting to be here, and I just want to create as much as I can while we're here.
So what is it that spurred you to get involved with supporting Marge's campaign?
Oh wow, anybody who's looked at her page or seen her or listened to her knows probably why. Everything that she stands for is exactly in line with what I see possible for us. She has no interest other than to help. Her pure interest is to support us and the people who are struggling, the people who are really struggling. And so I've just been getting on board with wherever I can help, and there's always some role that all of us can have, and so I've been organizing the postcards to get out to people in unincorporated areas mostly. I didn't even ask. I just said, oh, let's just do this. And
here it is.
And everyone has just come on board. And
you've got almost 3,000 out, right?
More than that, yeah.
Is it more than that now?
Yeah,
okay.
And mostly from the Morongo Basin area, mostly just friends who have said, I want to help. I'm just the person who sends the message. Everyone else is really doing the work of writing the postcards. And
somebody has to be kind of coordinating and getting the word out, if you will. Yeah, you need that person. So
yeah, exactly.
It's an important role.
Yeah, so I feel like the facilitator, and I find myself in that role a lot of times, and I love that role too.
Do you homeschool, or are they not old enough yet?
We're homeschooling our daughter, Vera, who is 5. She'll be starting kindergarten in the fall. And yet another thing that has been incredible is finding a huge community of people homeschooling, so much so that we're all so busy just with our kids. I've taken we've seen relatives, and they say, wow, your daughter's so social. I can't believe it, because you're homeschooling and all that. And it's because she's around kids every day, and the relationships that they have are so quality. that it's hard to kind of step out of that. So we're planning on homeschooling her at least next year, and we'll see what happens in the following year. But education is such an important thing to us that we're willing to sacrifice at this point if we can, which right now we're fortunate enough to be able to do that. So we'll see what happens. But there's also a group, being the facilitator that I want to be, I'm always looking for kids that are her age, and I just start a list of kids that are her age, and I'm always telling other people, just find other people that have kids the same age as your kid. And sure enough, now we have a list of about 20 kids, and I'm able to just send out stuff if we want to do an event, or if we want to get a group together and do a science class, or
well, that's what I was wondering. Do you like meet together and do activities, kind of like field trips that they would do in school and stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. Okay. And there are so many people that are motivated to do that. There's a Facebook group and a lot of people who are organizing constantly and always putting up events. And we meet at the park once a week. It's an ongoing thing. And that's how I met everybody, too, is that they were just doing this for years. And I was so grateful to find a group. As individuals, it's hard to get a lot done with your own child or with anything.
And it's interesting, though, that being in a rural community, because we are essentially a rural community, you would think that kids that are homeschooled would be kind of like just at home with their mom, learning every day, when in fact it sounds like it's just total opposite. It's almost like they go to school maybe once a week, even though you're teaching at home. But when they have these events and all the kids are together, it's just like they would be at school and say, okay, we're going out to, recess for 40 minutes or whatever.
Exactly, yeah. With co-ops where everybody gets together and does classes, between that and playground time and all of it, we're just so busy and so happy with how it's going.
Are there places that you have to go online to register that you're doing homeschooling with your kids? And are there particular places you need to go to buy materials and curriculum? How does that kind of come together?
So there are a few options as far as I understand. We're doing the charter school option, which we're going through Valiant. It's a state-funded charter school. So they give us funds every year, and we buy whatever we want with those funds. It's anything from Disneyland tickets to a curriculum. And then there's also becoming your own private school, and anybody can really do that too. You can say, I'm my own private school, and you don't get any funds that way, but you kind of have a lot more control of what you want to do with your child. Like if you're a Christian person, you get to choose that curriculum or something like that. And then as far as I understand too, there's a way to go through the public school system. I think it's called ICE, and you can meet with a teacher more regularly, have more of what they're doing in the public school, but do that at home.
And then do the kids then go to school like once a month, every 2 weeks or anything like that? Or
I don't know on that, but I do know as they get older, they can go to the sports programs at the high school, and they can go to music or whatever is going on, extracurricular stuff, maybe even labs. I'm not sure. Yeah, but they can be involved. So
back to the music a little bit, because I forgot to ask you this while we were talking about that. So you have some really unique instruments that you use. You have the glockenspiel, and before you came, I was watching a video, and you were using kind of, I don't know whether that you actually used the toy piano in the recording, but it looked like a little toy piano. Where do those ideas come from?
So the toy piano was something that I had looked for my daughter, because I just wanted to get her a vintage little piano. Turns out we use it much more ourselves. The glockenspiel was our drummer Caleb's, and he's been letting us borrow it. So I don't do too many parts on that necessarily. It's kind of to fill in. But also recently, when we were recording our third album, we used a lap harp, and Chris Unk, who has High Lonesome Studio and also plays guitar and lap steel with us, he had put a pickup inside the lap harp. So he made a hole and made it so you could plug it in.
Oh, wow.
And kind of make it a little distorted. And so on one of the songs on our newest album, we're actually just talking, And he's recording it, and we didn't even think anything of it, but it sounds like we're underwater.
Oh, that's cool.
And so then I started singing into it because it sounded so amazing. And just thought, oh, I'll sing into it. So that is part of our newest album.
Neat.
And it just kind of forms like that. We're just playing around. We kind of thought, well, we need some sort of ting sound in this part. So we played the actual harp itself, but hey, why not sing into it if it sounds great too?
Yeah. And if you stick around, people listening, there might even be some little surprise at the end. That's all I'm going to say about that. So if someone came to you and said, Faith, what is it about the desert? I'm thinking of moving out there. What kind of advice or insight do you have for me? What would some of the things be that you would say to them?
I would say come out and visit. Come see for yourself, because I have lots of friends who love it and lots of friends who hate it, and I don't really see any in between so much. They might be okay, but they mostly are just going, no, there's no way I'd live there. But I think once you come here and you look at it with the intention of maybe I will live here, it will strike you or it won't. And it definitely struck us, but it could have easily not. And I've heard a lot of people say that too. I'm
sure it was a number of things, but are there any things in particular that struck you that really drew you in immediately?
Definitely our house. But when we walked up to our house, when we first moved in, there's a palm tree in the front, and just the sound of the wind in the palm tree brought me to tears.
Oh, wow.
It was so powerful for me and so healing. And since we've lived here, I've healed a lot from so much pain I've had from my past, or things in mine and Tim's relationship that I needed to work through. I just see so much of that happening here too. And I kind of think of the desert as being a place of death, which sounds interesting and kind of scary and kind of like, why would you want to live there? I sort of see the forest as life and vibrant and colors and all that stuff. And the desert is like, you really are struck by the sun and you could just disintegrate almost.
Well, and sometimes people come here with things inside of them that probably need to die.
Exactly. And
so that they can move on.
Yeah. And that's what I've experienced over and over here, is just kind of facing my own death, facing the death of others, and not literally experiencing it, but just seeing that so much and being at peace about it, and kind of moving away from that fear.
Anything else?
No, I would really just say, just listen, come out and visit and listen and see what you hear. And if something strikes you and calls you to here, then come. But if it doesn't, don't force it.
Good advice. In your spare time, are you, well, you don't watch TV, but are you watching anything online, or any books that you have read lately, or anything like that? Some activities that you've done that you would highly recommend? Or
So I'm really interested in yoga and energy work and sound baths and things like that, meditation. So in my spare time, I usually gravitate towards that. Actually, this summer I'll be becoming a life coach. So that will be in my spare time.
Right.
And maybe working on that interest becoming a career at some point. So that's probably the biggest thing. I've just met so many amazing people out here who are so healing, and I would love to just be part of that and support people wherever I can too, and learn more about that.
What was it that, when you decided that you were going to do this life coaching, was there something that happened that you said, oh, I should be doing this and helping people?
So I have a degree in zoology, and I thought maybe I want to be a veterinarian. I wasn't sure. I just knew I was fascinated with animals. After that, I became a dog trainer, and I found my love, which is learning theory, really. And I obviously love music as well. But this was something I saw as being really helpful for people. When we moved to San Diego, I found the most incredible dog trainers. One of them is Emily Larlam. Kiko Pup is her YouTube channel. Highly recommend that for anybody looking for support. But the whole philosophy is just so empowering for the dogs, this approach of dog training, of positive reinforcement, and having them make choices and supporting their choice if they choose something that I see as being maybe more healthy as well, or limiting the choice so that the dog can't choose something that will hurt them or hurt someone else, right? So from that's really where all of my mothering kicked in as well. And so practicing with our kids has been so incredible, because I get to see how learning theory translates to all animals. That has always been an interest of mine, really. And now to maybe move that a little bit forward and support parents instead of dog owners, and have them see how they can apply this to their families too.
Right. Well, and speaking of that and supporting parents, I know that at some of the Daughters of the Desert meeting, you've talked about support groups for parents and moms that are out here. Has anything formed from that, and how does that look right now for you?
So I started a Facebook page called Help a Parent in Joshua Tree. It was actually inspired by Melanie Buck, who passed away, and she was a very loved person in our community, worked at the library and was our kids' librarian. I just thought there are all these groups for getting together with our kids and helping them with homeschooling, but there's not really a group to say, hey, I need help. So I just added most of my friends, and then also people who want to help parents, who have the time, because parents have a hard time helping each other.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I've got 3 kids. Let me bring my 2 over, and then you can have 5 while I go to the spa. Yeah.
So I'm often feeling like I'm telling my friends who don't have kids, we need your help. If you have a spare couple of hours where you can just come over and watch the kids while somebody takes a shower or goes and gets groceries where they don't have to take their kids with them, right?
Yeah.
So all of those things, I mean, the struggle of parenting is so extreme, in my opinion. I don't think it's really how it's meant to be. We live in a community where we have so many people who are available to help each other. Hopefully this group will help people do that. Even more than that is needed, though. Really, more support for parents is really needed. What
would you see if you had your ideal situation?
Ideal situation would be a government-funded program for parents having, at least $500 a month for babysitting, or for some sort of support for them, whatever we need to spend it on. Because I cannot leave my children alone without being arrested.
Right. Yeah.
So, but yet I can't have anyone else come in unless I pay them. So I have to then go work. It just is too hard. And I think that when somebody's taking care of a sick person in their home or an elderly person, they actually get funding from the government.
Oh, really? Like caregiver?
Yeah, like a caregiver fund, right? But parents don't. And I just think there's so much misunderstanding of parenting being this beautiful thing and you're doing it for you. But really I see it as we are doing something for the future of our planet. And the more support the parents have, the better the next generation's going to be. Right. The stress level of parenting is so through the roof that it's hard to be a good parent, even if you want to be.
Yeah, you get pulled in so many different directions, and financially, and
lack of sleep for years. People think, oh, is your baby sleeping through the night? Sometimes it won't happen for 2 years. I just hope that someday people like Marge Doyle, people who really are listening to the people.
And have what do they call that, a finger on the pulse of what's really happening.
Exactly.
In the country with people.
Yeah.
Right.
So someday.
Yeah.
Someday.
And that
keep
Facebook
going.
page is Help a Parent, in case somebody in Joshua Tree is listening and hasn't been made aware yet. They can go out there.
Yes, Help a Parent Joshua Tree. It might be a private group. It'd probably be better to find me, and then I can add them. Yeah, actually, it's a secret group.
Yeah, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's kids.
Yeah, but there are lots of other Facebook pages out there for parents as well. There's the High Desert Mamas group, and so if anybody's interested in that, yes, contact me. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate you coming and talking with us today about your music and being a mom and helping our future politically. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Thanks so much for doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Desert Lady Diaries podcast. I want you to know how much I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. If you heard something that inspired or enlightened you, I'd love to hear about it. Send an email to desertladydiaries@gmail.com or start a discussion with other listeners at the Desert Lady Diaries Facebook page. You might recognize next week's guest, Teresa Seitz, from her weekly Joshua Tree column in the High Desert Star Weekender, or her work as a member of the Morongo Basin Municipal Advisory Council. Teresa has a new role as the coordinator of the Wonder Valley Community Center, and she'll share some of the great things that are happening there. And if you've got 2 minutes after finishing this podcast, I would really appreciate it if you'd go on the platform that you're listening from and leave a review. It gives others an idea of what the podcast is about and also spreads the message a little further. Thanks so much for listening. And as promised, here's a little something from the Adobe Collective. It's called Tamarisk.
Days are short, the nights are long. Where have you gone? Where have you gone? You're climbing hard, but you're feeling strong. Where have you gone?